Hello, I'm Ian Scott. This second of our series of interviews is somewhat different from the rest. In the fall of 1991, a television journalist called Trish Wood of the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation's program The Fifth Estate took a camera crew with her down to New York, and there captured Father Lee's performance, if that's the right word, on a Texaco Opera Quiz. The other panelists on that day were Albert Inarato and Charles Osborne. This documentary also captures the legendary producer of the intermission features for the Metropolitan Opera, Richard Moore, and the venerable and courtly quizmaster, Edward Downes. So here is Father Lee making it at the Met.
The opera world is no place for the shy and bashful. Everything about opera is larger than life. The voices, plots, costumes, bosoms, and needless to say, the egos. So what is a silver-haired, thoughtful classics professor doing at New York's Metropolitan Opera House almost every Saturday afternoon? Well, for one thing, Father Owen Lee is having a great time. To 10 million opera buffs around the world, Toronto's piano-playing priest is known as one of the quickest wits on the weekly opera quiz. Many of us may dream of appearing but once at the fabled Met. Father Lee is one of the few who've actually made it. It's Friday morning and Father Owen Lee is making his usual mad dash out of town. His destination, the Met, for his 57th appearance.
I was so sure that the first time I would flop, that they would cancel my second appearance.
He pays for his Toronto subway ride and scrambles to the platform to catch his train to the airport.
I do it because it's opera, because it's exciting. Because it's what I want to do. I'm not doing it for any megabucks. They're paying me peanuts.
This is no posh New York weekend at the Plaza or the Pierre. Father Lee bypasses them and heads straight for the more Spartan accommodation at the residence of the Paulist Fathers. Next day, he's at the Met.
Operatic librettos often use almost identical words.
He appears with other guest panelists at intermission for Texaco's popular opera quiz. He is a master at answering esoteric questions about opera and operatic characters most of us have never heard of.
Father Lee's hand shot up.
I think I can name two, but certainly, and both of them's name is actually Heinrich. Uno's
right.
Faust.
Yes.
He's never called either Faust or Heinrich, it seems to me, in the opera.
Mm-hmm.
And Wagner's Tannhäuser,
Yes.
whose name is Heinrich von Ofterdingen. And he's actually called Heinrich several times in the opera,
Yes.
but never Tannhäuser.
Especially in the duet when he meets Elizabeth for the first time after his...
Why is Father Lee doing this?
I'm doing it, I suppose, to show off. Don't we all show off a little bit in our lives? Yes. But I'm doing it because it's fun. And it is, in a sense, yes, the realization of a boyhood dream. Mm-hmm.
Today, that boy, born in Detroit, has become a priest and also a professor at St. Michael's College at the University of Toronto. He's been teaching classics for 25 years. Father Lee is a popular professor who loves his kind of popular music.
Most people's music is the music that they knew, they loved, they made love to, they danced to when they were teenagers. And my music is the Irving Berlin, Harold Arlen, Richard Rodgers songs of the 30s and 40s.
And nothing can beat it.
Nothing can beat it. I can pick it out.
Nothing beats listening to it, and for Father Lee, nothing beats playing it on the old piano in the faculty room at St. Michael's. Father Lee comes here to relax, and relaxing means singing a few of those old romantic tunes.
Let's face it, love is the most important single thing in all of life and in all the world. Why not sing about it? Why not write poems about it? Let's try one by Rodgers and, not Hart, but Hammerstein. A little faster. Chicks and ducks and geese better scurry when I
know
take
this
you
one.
out in the Surrey. When I take you out in the Surrey with the fringe
On top.
You got it, sister. Watch that fringe and see how it flutters when I drive them high-step strutters. Nosy pokes will peep through the shutters and their eyes will
Pop.
That's it. The wheels are yeller, the upholstery's brown, the dashboard's genuine leather. With isinglass curtains you can roll right down in case there's a change in the
Weather.
Wonderful. Two bright side lights winking and blinking. Ain't no finer rig, I'm a-thinking.
It was the music of Broadway, show tunes by the legendary composers that fueled Father Lee's boyhood love of music. And then he discovered opera and the Met, which, after all, isn't that far from Broadway.
I can give you the exact date. It's February the 14th, 1942. I was 11 years old. The Sister of Charity, who was giving me my piano lessons, said, trying to raise my sights a little bit, you should listen to the New York Philharmonic on Sunday afternoon and the Metropolitan Opera on Saturday afternoon. So I turned on the Metropolitan Opera that afternoon, and the opera was Tannhäuser. But for an 11-year-old boy who was crazy about Jerome Kern, George Gershwin, and Harold Arlen, and their wonderful harmonies, Tannhäuser was a revelation because there were harmonies in there like nothing you ever heard, certainly like nothing I'd ever heard. And, well, it swept over me. It simply swept over me like a tidal wave.
It would be another 41 years before that boy would appear at the Met. He wrote for the Met's Opera News while teaching in Toronto, but it was on reassignment in California that he received the coveted invitation to appear on the Met Quiz.
Then I found out that I was going to have to go to New York in January without an overcoat. My superior, who was a Francis of Assisi, if ever there was one, said, I've got a coat you can take, but we'll have to sew some buttons on it. So we sewed buttons on it, and we actually covered the worn patches with shoe polish, so I would look presentable when I appeared on the grand tier at the Met and hung up my coat. And so with that old coat, I went to the Met for the first time.
Today, the coat is new, but the jitters stay the same.
I'm nervous. I'm conscious of all my failings. My knees are knocking, and I have to pop the lozenge in my throat because I think, what am I doing here? And I say to myself, why am I doing this? It's crazy.
During intermission, the Met's audience comes to watch the quiz. 10 million people around the world will hear today's broadcast on radio. A dignified gent, Edward Downs, is the quizmaster. The audience loves the brain-teasing questions sent in by other fans to stump the panel.
So Miss Cohen asks, can you give the father, her father, any support from the world of opera? Can you name any operatic ladies who would demonstrate or even prove, perhaps, that a woman's place is in the home? I see.
That's a tough question.
That is a tough question, but there is an opera which is a favorite children's opera in which there is a affectionate mother. Yes, Father Lee?
Well, I thought of Hansel and Gretel. She really could be quite mean when the chips were down, but I think in the long run, she loved the children as much as the father.
I think so, too. And even if her place is in the home, perhaps she has the privilege of being a little upset now
We
and
can
then.
give you a lot of stories of girls who left home and got into trouble, but that isn't what you mean.
That's a reverse kind of proof.
The mother of all mothers, I suppose, is Erda, and she certainly believes that she should stay at home, sleeping underneath the earth. When she's awakened, she says, go away and let me sleep.
Yes.
I know the feeling.
Quiz producer Richard Moore says Father Lee is a genuine crowd pleaser. We wondered if he was surprised that a priest would be an opera buff.
No. all opera buffs are tainted.
Are tainted.
Yes, at an early age, usually. If you don't catch them early, why, they never become opera enthusiasts. He's just encyclopedic in his knowledge. I mean, I once told him that he will die early of brain fever because he knows so much.
I'm interested in the idea that a priest has embraced so passionately an art form whose themes are sinful. Betrayal, adultery, incest, murder, suicide.
That's the stuff of life, Trish. I'm sure you'd agree with me on that. Opera is drama, and like the greatest dramas, Shakespeare and Greek tragedy, opera is about all of these things, and and facing up to them, and somehow finding the answers to your own problems and these issues that are these dramas that are so much larger than anything, hopefully, you and I experience in our rather humdrum lives. I mean, opera, music and drama come together in this very powerful way. That's cleansing, that's life-enhancing, that's opera. One of the wonders of art is that it's a medium, after all, with the spectator, the listener on one side, and the great artist on the other. And God is at work in this exchange.
Back in Toronto, Father Lee's celebrity falls away, and he's just another priest doing God's work. His fulfillment in the end comes not at the Met, but during Sunday Mass at Christ the King Church.
Love is the strongest, deepest, most beautiful thing in all of living. It's important for me to do this work on Sundays and weekends because the most beautiful thing I do is to celebrate the Christian rituals that accompany all the mysteries of life. Marriage, birth, First Communion, burial, and then this weekly ritual which sustains and nourishes practicing Catholics all their lives. The most beautiful thing I do, really, is to celebrate the Mass and administer the sacraments to believing Christians. Body of Christ. The vows are not limiting experiences, contrary to what the media in Toronto seem to believe, or at least want to believe. The vows are not frustrating and limiting. The vows are liberating. You're liberated with the vow of poverty from the obsessive need to make money or to stay alive, really. With the vow of chastity, that's something of a problem, I suppose, when you're a teenager, but you don't really realize the sacrifice you've made until you're in your midlife crisis, let's say.
And then what happens to you?
Then you realize that you're not ever going to have a daughter or a son, and this hits you hard.
Was that tough on you, Father?
It was. It was a difficult period for me.
How did you resolve
listening
it?
to opera.
Listening to opera.
Mm-hmm. I think Wagner especially was helpful to me there.
Father Lee's love of opera and his friendship with quizmaster Edward Downs adds an extra dimension to a rich life. After the Saturday broadcast, they stroll the streets of New York together, working their way down Central Park West to Mr. Downs' apartment in the stately Old Dakota.
That was a pretty spontaneous quiz today. I feel pretty good about that one.
Well, you should. And the others weren't bad. You were the star as always. But
I can't, what can I say?
Used to that. You don't need to say a thing, just smile.
Just smile, right.
Over their ritual glass of port, the two veteran opera buffs settle in for an evening of reminiscing about what else? Opera.
So you really think that the quartet in Idomeneo is the high point of the opera?
Yes, I think for me it is, really. And I think that Mozart thought a lot of it,
Well,
too.
I know he did. I I'm not always convinced. I love the choruses, and I love Torna la Pace at the end. Here's to us.
No. And to many more
And to
performances and quizzes together.
Given Father Lee's popularity and expertise, he's bound to have an extended run at the Met. Do you consider yourself lucky for getting, if I might call it this, a gig at the Met?
Yes, I do consider myself lucky because I'm sure there are 100,000 people that know more about opera than I do. But I've been lucky enough somehow to get caught up in this, and I guess I'm pretty good at it. And then after the performance, I've gone home with Edward Downes to his bachelor apartment for a dinner, and we've talked about Mozart or Verdi or Wagner over port. After that kind of a day, I'm walking back down Central Park West, 11 o'clock at night, and the lights of New York are in front of me, and I say, I'm just the luckiest guy in all the world.